this is fairly late breaking news today. The WWE shareholder trial, the one set to begin Monday in the Delaware Court of Chancery, as of late this afternoon, does no longer appear on the court's calendar. That's per Bloomberg law. Our own Brandon will talk about this. He has looked into this as well. The case doesn't appear on the court's website own schedule for next week. An attorney for the shareholders, Greg Verallo, also said late this afternoon that the planned 4-day trial is no longer on the court calendar, but he declined to elaborate on the reason. Of course, as you mentioned, our own Brandon Thurston has been chasing this directly. As our listeners know, he's been all over this case from the beginning and had planned to attend oral arguments in person on Monday. So we're all keen to know what the latest is. And Brandon, we're very grateful to have him with us.
Brandon, welcome to the show. Are your bags still packed for Delaware?
I had not started packing yet. So I'm looking into what travel insurance options we have here at WrestleNomics, because it's looking like it might not be worth the trip to Delaware after all.
Explain to us. I mean, so this is not official yet, but how likely is it that that they may have reached a settlement in this case?
At a minimum, it looks quite likely that there will not be a trial this coming week. The trial was scheduled for most of all of next week except for Thursday, right? It was going to be a 4-day trial. That's what was on the orders for months, right? That was part of the schedule, the 8th, 9th, 10th, and 12th. And the calendar comes out, as I understand. A lot of this credit goes to Jennifer Kay, whose article with Bloomberg Law we're showing on the screen here. She covers the Chancery Court on a regular basis, and every Friday this court calendar comes out that shows all of the hearings and events that are going to happen in the week to come, this coming week. And this calendar came out today, and there is no indication whatsoever that there's a trial. And there, if this trial is going to happen, you'd expect that. And as she has in that article there, she has what exactly does it say in that article for Bloomberg Law? She writes, an attorney for the shareholders, Greg Verallo of Bernstein, Litowitz, Berger, and Grossman, this is one of the plaintiff's attorneys, said late Friday afternoon that the planned 4-day trial was no longer on the court's calendar. Well, that's self-evident, but it goes on to say the reason for its removal from the calendar was not immediately made available, and Verallo declined to elaborate. At a minimum, doesn't look like there's going to be a trial on Monday. Does that mean they're close to a settlement? Only the docket would really tell us, and I've been watching the docket very carefully. I have it on auto refresh. There's a lot of action on the docket, in particular related to my notice of challenge. They've had to refile some things that were due today, which they did. But there's no indication on the docket that there is a settlement. I talked to the public information officer for the Court of Chancery, who basically gave me a call to tell me that he doesn't know anything. And I don't think they keep him informed about settlements being imminent or anything like that. What happens with this court is that they're very careful about format, and that basically the clerk has to review anything that's submitted. So if, let's say, something had been submitted on the docket this evening, it might not appear on the docket publicly until Monday, when the clerk comes back into work on Monday and reviews it. That's even if something is submitted on the docket at this point. Long story short, I am looking into what my travel options are as far as canceling my hotel.
Are there any other explanations, plausible explanations for this, other than a settlement or a pending settlement? Could it be a procedural matter, some sort of postponement?
I did raise that question to the public information officer. I said, do you know of any other situations like this where, where the trial is scheduled and it doesn't appear on the calendar? And does that ever, result in a settlement or not a settlement? I didn't get much information out of him about that. I mean, it's possible that they're working on a settlement and the settlement falls apart and that there's still a trial. But it certainly looks like there's not going to be a trial on Monday. It could be the case that, to not upset the judge. They've indicated that there's not going to be a trial. I've emailed I've emailed the clerk of the court trying to ask why was the trial scheduled, and now why does it not appear on the calendar? And I sent this email a few hours ago, Friday evening, when government employees are probably not working or paying attention to their email. So I've called the lawyers, and I've gotten nowhere.
Even in this period before an actual trial, I mean, we really seemingly on a daily basis receive some nuggets of like new information regarding the relationship between Vince McMahon and Ari Emanuel, or just the inner workings of maybe this deal. What were some of the highlights that stood out to you from what we discovered today in the pre-trial briefing?
We got a good cohesive timeline from the plaintiffs about their theory about why shareholders are owed hundreds of millions of dollars. We did get, as we're showing in video right now, embedded in the pretrial brief, which think of it as like it's the opening statements, but just on paper. We did get embedded in the very brief itself an image that Vince McMahon sent to Ari Emanuel on Ari's birthday. It is the poster of the movie Step Brothers, but instead of Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly, it's Vince McMahon and Ari Emanuel. And it's accompanied with text messages between these two men who are so affectionate with each other. They're so grateful for each other. They love each other. Very appreciative. It makes this relationship look very close. These are a few text messages, but it suggests that Ari and Vince were even closer than I might have thought before I read these text messages.
So many questions about maybe this alone. First of all, do we have a date on this this graphic? When was this exchange from?
I would have to pull up the pre-trial brief to tell you.
Secondly, I mean, I don't know if this must have been before the age of AI, and therefore I imagine like just some straight up photoshopping for this wonderful poster. Vince obviously did not do this himself. So who did he commission to plaster his and Ari Emanuel's faces over Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly to make this poster?
That's
George Barrios?
It's a question we're trying to investigate right now.
Yeah.
You don't have to. Go ahead.
Yeah. The date I guess would be relevant information, but I mean, it really is incredible, and maybe just shows you a shred of like the information that they might be trying to protect in not going to trial.
Yeah, I mean, so again, the plaintiffs were looking for somewhere around $500 million to close to $1 billion in damages. So if there is a settlement here, I think it's really a question of like, we'll know, I think, fairly soon if there is a settlement, because if nothing else, shareholders are going to get a letter saying you're going to get X number of cents or dollars per share if you held stock during this time. I wonder what the plaintiffs would settle for, and how strong they thought their argument was, how weak the defense would have thought their argument is. I would add, from what I can gather about the judge, Vice Chancellor J. Travis Laster, if there was someone who would be expected to be quite punitive with the defendants in this case, I think this is sort of the judge that they drew, that they would not make their prospects look better than otherwise. I understand that there are members of the Delaware bar who look at him as too aggressive or too punishing, too punitive towards business entity defendants. He's done a lot of scholarly work around business ethics and around controlling shareholders that's quite pertinent to this case. So I could see, the prospect of leaving the judgment to the judge here to be a little bit scary for the defendants.
Do you think we'll be able to figure out the settlement amount?
Yes, eventually. It may take time, but you can't pay shareholders without telling them how much you're paying them. Right? These are publicly publicly held shares. When there was a shareholder settlement in the past, I remember being shown letters that shareholders were getting. I mean, any retail investor would get a letter saying you're getting X number of shares per share. It'll be something to the effect of, let's say, if you held I don't know that's going to be this, right? But it could be something to the effect of, if you held W shares between, let's say, January 5th, 2023 to September 12th, 2023, you're going to get, X number of cents per share that you held during that time. I think it would be difficult to withhold that. We knew that there was a $39 million settlement in the last shareholder lawsuit. That's a much smaller amount of money that was being gone after back in 2021 or so. So I don't know all the mechanics, but I would be very surprised if we do not pretty quickly understand what the settlement value was, it's another question of like, who's liable for that? I assume still insurance would cover most of this, but I wonder what the insurance companies would look at Vince's conduct here and say, do we cover that? We would have to talk to somebody who understands liability insurance for directors and officers better than I do.
That was going to be my next question about the role of the insurance people in all of this. If this had gone to trial, it feels as though, from your reporting, from everything I've read, that really up to Vince at least, the other members would have been indemnified, and the insurance company would have paid out. But that could have been up to, as you say, nearly $1 billion. That's probably unlikely, but it could have been. Would the insurers not have lent on the company to say, we could get away with a smaller outgoing if you settle? This is total speculation, and again, it's probably something we would need to look at an indemnification expert to answer.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if insurance providers were consulted in these settlement talks. Yeah, there are still documents that have not been challenged that could be challenged, even if this case gets dismissed on Monday. Which, whatever. That's extreme. But let's say this case gets closed on Monday. Redactions are still challengeable, and I'll have to go through all the filings again to see what's viable. But it's not as if further challenges of redactions and of sealed filings cannot be made. They could be made.
The optimist in me, Brandon, was thinking, there's no way they can get through this trial in 4 days. Perhaps it's just being with the cast of thousands that we were going to get on the stand testifying. So the bright side of me was thinking, the court has just decided, look, we can't do this in 4 days. We're going to have to reschedule till, another time so we can get through all of the testimony. But I think the much more likely outcome is there's a settlement on the way.
I mean, the prospect of putting Vince on the stand, of putting Ari on the stand, putting Mark Shapiro on the stand, perhaps Nick Khan, perhaps Paul Levesque on the stand, from a PR standpoint, I'm sure those are things that those people want to avoid. I can only imagine what Vince on the stand would be like in 2026 regarding all this.
If there's any official, announcement of anything, I'm sure we will be hearing from you and from John Pollock over at postwrestling.com. Brandon, you have been doing unprecedented work on this story, and we're so incredibly proud at Post Wrestling to be able to host a lot of it. So whether or not there's a trial, I just want to thank you from really just us, but also the entire, I would say, wrestling community at large for uncovering a lot of very interesting information for all of this, and we await any further updates from you over the weekend.
Sure thing. One way or another, we're not done yet, I'm sure.
All right. That is Brandon Thurston. Again, check out Pollock and Thurston if you are looking for maybe just a bit of a catch-up, if you've kind of, been hearing about this but aren't exactly sure of like what the big takeaways have been. This week's Pollock and Thurston, and also the associated articles over at postwrestling.com have done a great job of catching everybody up. So thank you, Brandon, for joining us.
Thanks a lot, guys. See ya.
Welcome to Open House Week on the Post Wrestling Cafe. This week, members of the free tier receive all of our bonus shows. That includes Post Pro Res with WH Park and Karen Peterson, a special Rewind Away looking at the career of Manami Toyota, a review of the Best of the Super Juniors final, and a new MCU Later with Rich Fan and WH Park. Plus, that means all the XL editions of Rewind a Raw, Dynamite and SmackDown, Collision Course, and the audio news updates. Sign up for free at postwrestlingcafe.com and consider becoming a member.